right, welcome to the Unity Guides Interviews with Experts series. My name's Clayton Stenson, and I'm the host and founder of the Unity Guide, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. So we do this through fractional integrator services and coaching for the visionary and or integrator for second in command. So recently, I've been meeting so many amazing people, and I thought there has to be a way that I can take a piece of the conversations I have week in and week out and share them with the EOS community to add value. And one of those amazing people that I know is Michele Mollard. Michele is an EOS implementer in the Michigan market, and we met through H7 Network. And Michele actually is one of the reasons that I became a fractional integrator, as she referred me to someone who referred me to my first fractional client. So thank you for that, Michele.
Of course. Of
And
course.
Michele and I were speaking recently, and she told me that she's very passionate about LMA, or leadership management and accountability, and more specifically about the first leadership practice, which is giving clear direction. So today we're going to speak about that. But before we do, I have two questions to ask you, Michele. First, what's the entrepreneurial operating system in your own words, in case someone doesn't know what that is and they're watching?
Yeah, in my own words, it helps an owner get what they want from their business. But really, more deeply than that, it really helps them realize that there's so many other people in their organization that can bring value to the organization and can do the jobs that they might be wearing, right? So an owner loves to make their widget, really loves that part, but now they're the head of HR and now they're doing financing. And so sometimes they just don't see how much they're in the business. And what I love about EOS is realizing that they can step out and look at that and say, I'm the bottleneck.
Mm.
I need to have people around me. I need to, we talk about delegate and elevate. I need to delegate and elevate to be able to break through the ceiling. And that's what I love about it. And it's also why it's connected to this topic is it's all about anybody and everybody can step up. And we've just got to see that as leaders. And how do we make sure that we see that? And then how do we create an opening for them to do that? And that's what EOS does for me. It's really about the people side of that. And I feel strongly that if you have the right people, money and revenue happens, growth happens. It's just natural kind of byproduct of it.
Awesome. I used to say that having the right people's half the battle, but I actually think it's more than that.
Mm.
I think it's very
Three
important.
quarters, three quarters.
The second question, just a quick,
Yeah.
what is your EOS story? How did you discover it, and what led you to become an implementer?
Yeah, I kind of start with the end in mind. I didn't realize until about 10 years ago that I had a real passion for wanting to have everybody reach their full potential. So anybody that I interact with, you alluded to it, you were saying this, and I was like, oh, I can connect him with this guy. And right, that's what it is, right? For me, it's really that greater good. And so what I realized in my career, my journey through starting several companies and working for companies is oftentimes I wasn't allowed to do that. The guardrails were so small. I was in sales and I would say, but look, operations, we could do this better, or we could do this differently, or how do we communicate better? And it's stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And so then I was introduced to the EOS and I was like, oh, there's no lanes. It's everybody getting everybody better, right? How do I help third shift warehouse workers be completely engaged? And for where I was at that time, they were leaving us for 10 cents an hour, right? I mean, that's not a significant amount of money to change your lifestyle. And so there's a cultural problem. And so that company implemented EOS. I was a part of that. And I just latched on. And then I said, I've got to go do this thing for many, many other companies. I could do it for one and have a really good impact on employees. But I just really thought, let's go do this for the world.
That's awesome. That's very
Hmm.
similar to my journey and why I launched out into a coaching role, because I wanted to have a bigger impact, and I just
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. So
For
that's
sure.
great.
For
So,
sure.
all right, well,
Yeah.
let's shift gears into
Yeah.
LMA. And so
Okay.
why did you share, why don't you share why this topic was so
Mm.
important to share?
Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit about why, what EOS is for me, it really is about the people. And so I'm really passionate about it. I'm really passionate about everybody reaching their full potential. And so it really is that for me. And it's really the whole part of that, as you said, it's the first leadership ability. It's there to create an opening. It's really for them to be able to see where they can go. And we'll get into it, I'm sure. but it's also not being selfish and saying, you know what, if my employee under me as a mid manager should go somewhere else on another team, even though it would hurt, right? I use that word in air quotes, hurt me or put me behind, or I would have to step into two seats. That is the right thing to do for the greater good. And that's what I'm passionate about, is teaching my teams and my leadership teams that it's not just seeing the opening and creating it on the accountability chart. It's actually, how do I develop them? How do I give them the resources? And then say, this is the right thing to do, even if I'm, have to step into two seats, right? Which often happens.
Hmm. Well, I think often the visionary is in all the seats, right? Like,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the danger, I think, is that, you can become that leader with 1,000, or leader with 1,000 helpers, genius with 1,000 helpers, right?
Yes.
And I've seen
Yes.
that many times. And the first leadership practice is giving clear direction.
Yes.
Um, and I think about vision firstly. How
Mm-hmm.
often are visions in someone's head? And how
Oh,
can you talk a little bit about that, and how giving clear direction is impacted by the vision being communicated?
yeah. I would say, you're saying, we're saying 50%. This one's upwards of 75. I would say upwards probably of 90%, especially in our target market who we're talking to. It really is in their heads. And I think that um, two things. I think that they think they've communicated it, and they maybe have, but they haven't connected the dots. And then the other part is they haven't really made it come to life, right? So I've not really seen where all of those dots connect and how I do. So, true story, I was with a potential customer and I was on a factory floor, and I asked the owner, "Do you think that they want to know what that part is?" Like, they're just a stamp, not just the company is a stamping plant, and it was a part of a part. And he goes, "They don't care." And I went, "Hmm, interesting perspective," right? And I think that's showing that compelling vision, right, is really saying that, that is a life-saving apparatus for a trocor, or that, or whatever, right? It's a part of a fibrillator. I don't know, right? I mean, those are obviously life-saving,
Yeah.
more than a part of a car, right? But if it's a seatbelt sensor, I'm pretty happy that my seatbelt sensor goes off, or an airbag sensor, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can relate all those things, and I think that's what it is it's really about um, showing everybody the connection to what they're doing connects to the vision, and what they may not be doing. Like, I think of salespeople that, arguably could be milking the clock, and realizing how that affects bottom line, how that, their race to the bottom on margins and just selling it for whatever it is. Clearly, if they're commissioned, it affects them, but not realizing that there's a profit sharing, on the front end or back end to operations. And then they're selling that part for less money than what we could really make, and it's affecting the whole company and their profit sharing, right? And so really tying those visions together, so it's tangible. What they're doing every day is a tangible outcome.
Mhm. So how does somebody, if they've never, if they feel like maybe they haven't clearly communicated their vision, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's doing it often. Right, is in the world of EOS, we have state of the company, so quarterly state of the companies, and sharing that entire vision. And for those that might be familiar with this, it's a 2-page vision traction organizer. It's not 17 pages, and so it's really easy to communicate that. It's a very quick hour-long meeting, but it's really conveying all parts of it. Many times our owners get a little bit uneasy in their seat when I say you have to share profit. And they went, "What? I'm not sharing profit." And here's my point. A part of that is, if you're a $10 million company, most of your employees think that you're walking away with 9 million in your pocket. And I pause there because the owners, and including you, are laughing, because we all know that is not true, but that's how they think. And so when you share with them, in some cases, I'm not kidding, it's less than $100,000 of profit because they've reinvested. Like, they need to know that. They need to understand that, machinery costs this, and even uniforms cost this, or cleaning services, so they don't have to do their own laundry. Like, whatever those things and those benefits and perks, they don't understand how that adds up, and they don't understand that payroll is upwards of 30, 50, 60% of the costs, benefits, all those things. And so they really don't track it. And so when we share that with that is really not being afraid to share every part of that vision and often.
Yeah, that's good. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. One of my clients, I don't think it was last quarter, this quarter, it was quarter before, we did this exercise where they had a dollar bill on the screen during this state of the company, and he just showed like, okay, this much of the
Ah,
dollar, like on average, goes to this,
yeah.
and this much goes to overhead, and this much goes to, reinvesting, this much goes to
Oh,
interest,
that's
this much, and this much
fantastic.
goes to taxes, and like this is what's left.
This little sliver of this $1 is what's left. I
Yeah,
love that.
it's really important, I think, for people to realize that, because yeah, they can think that you're a multi-millionaire, and maybe you're just
Yes.
really, getting by.
Yeah. No, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
it's
No.
good. Um, awesome. And what role, I'm camping a little bit on vision here, but what whole role does vision play in filtering out the direction or
Ah,
not direction of the company?
yeah, big time, right? I mean, the whole thing is the filter. And so some people think, oh, it's just the target market or the marketing strategy that is the filter of who we want to talk to and what we want to say. But I tell my teams often, your core values are not just for your staff, it's for your vendors, right? And so how do we filter out bad vendors, right? And so, we might need those vendors for a period of time, but then we can get more selective and more selective as we start to get better and better at that. And so just to that point, right? Obviously, the core focus with the purpose, right, in our niche is pretty easy, but I don't think that oftentimes, for me, it is really a sticking point that core values do that and filter that out. And then two, um, 3-year picture, right? If we look at that and say, oh, I want to open up an office in Chicago. Great. Is it on the 3-year picture? Nope, I don't care as the owner. And saying, but do you understand the resources that need to take away? So then these three things, arguably whatever it might be on the 3-year picture, will have to not come true because our resources, time, people, money, all those things um, will take up that time, right? That's just basically a switch, right? It's an even wash. And so if you want to do that, Mr. Owner, or even integrator or leadership team, then that's fine. Then these things will have to stop doing or delay longer. So it's again a huge filter, but I love it because it's a discussion, right? The idea of the VTO is to bring the discussion to the leadership team. And that's sometimes hard when owners have gone through and they are the sole decision makers. And now they have to bring it to a team. And some of them say, I don't have to. And I'm like, well, you don't have to. But it really is about that. And generationally, collaboration is huge, right? It is coming with a vengeance, if you will. And I think it's a good thing. So I don't mean that negatively. And so they're going to demand it. Younger leadership team members are going to demand that they want to be in on it. And I think that's kind of what that filter means is they have a lot of great ideas too.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's one of them. I think I think one of the most important things is getting engagement and buy-in from your team.
Yeah,
And you can't do that without involving them in conversations and decisions. And, yeah, you have the vision.
yep,
Ultimately, you're the
yep,
one who owns the company, but you need to make them a part of it somehow if you want, their buy-in and their
for
engagement.
sure. Well, and they might be really excited about Chicago, right? But uh, if you just tell them that this is what's happening, they're not as excited as they are to brainstorm about it and buy into it. And they'll be like, "Heck yeah, this and this are gone. I'm ready. Let's go." Right? And
Right.
you'll be surprised, right? But it's that energy that you want to foster, instill, find, right, and just bubble up, and then you as the visionary watch it happen. Right? Just watch it happen because they'll run. They'll just run.
And that's really fun part,
Oh my goodness.
right? Is
Oh yeah.
when the team starts to run. And
Yeah.
when I became integrator the first time, I remember at some point in the process, the owner said to me, Clayton, it's so refreshing to have someone else who is going to improve this company, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't all, it's not all on me. This
Mm-hmm.
is like that company was existence for, I think it was 12 years at that time, and it was the first time where it really felt like someone on the team owned it enough
Mm-hmm.
that if he went on holidays, it would come back better. He would come
Yeah.
back, right? And
Right.
that's incredible, right? When you get that level of buy-in.
Well, and I know we're talking about LMA, but the other acronym GWC, right? I always joke with my team. They're like, they just ran with it. I'm like, that's what get it, want it, and capacity looks like right now, right? Right seat. It is. I mean, you don't get out of the way. Like let them. I mean, guardrails, right? Financials, right? All those things.
Yeah, yeah.
But watch the energy, right? Get out of the way of the energy and let them run. But I always tell my teams that's what GWC looks like, and then they start to see it, and they'll identify it earlier or not, or identify the not
Yeah.
earlier as they progress through that once they start to see it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
So a
Hmm.
couple of things you said when we were kind of preparing for this interview.
Yeah,
You said, you know, you said something about come for my job.
I did.
What did that, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it has been. I've been in the world of EOS in some capacity for the last 10 years, and I learned it early on. The saying doesn't come from EOS, but I learned that saying is everybody that I have led come for my job, whether I'm the owner, whether I'm a mid manager, whether I'm a janitor, I don't care. So the concept is this: if you want to be in this seat, what do you need to be there, right? Between them and I, what do I see that they might need from skill sets, and what do they think they need from skill sets? And then what does that journey look like? Is it 6 months from now, 3 months from now, 3 years from now? And let's develop it. Come for my job. Like I'll find something else, like push me out of the nest, right? So I might find something internally, right? I may go up a level. I may go down a level, right? There's always that option. Or I just may go out, right? And that's okay too, right? And so I think there's another part of that is sometimes we have to do them a favor, right? And bring them with us or bring them out, right? And so kind of keeping with the theme of staying with it is I think that's what our role is, right? Is just again, there's another leadership ability, give them time, resources, right? Whatever skills, whatever that is, and let's start developing them. And you'll see people again, GWC, they'll just roll with it. They want it so badly, they'll say, "I want this class, I want this class, I want this class." Go, good. And I always get pushback from people like, "Well, they want to do the training on the company time." To me, not GWC. If I want that job and I want that salary and I want those things, I'll do it no matter what, right? And so EOS has a core value called grow or die. Um, I think there's, not everybody has that, and so that's sometimes really hard. But at the same time, if you really want something, nothing gets in your way. You'll figure out the time to put into it. You'll figure out the resources to put into it, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what I mean is, and like so, I push back a lot on companies that say, "Oh, I have to pay them to do their training to get better." Hmm. Maybe some, but not
Hmm.
all,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So,
I'm wondering, like, if someone's listening to this and they hear this, they might be like, I know because I've had this many times where it's like someone on your team is like really smart, and you're
Mhm.
like, they're smarter than me. Like there's that
Mm.
imposter syndrome kind of
Yes,
comes in
yes.
kind of a situation. What advice do you have for somebody like that? Because they say, when you read all the leadership books and business,
Mm.
it says you surround yourself with people smarter than you. But when you
Yes.
do that, there is some imposter syndrome kind of happening. What advice do you have for people like that?
Um, I would say, check yourself, right? It's okay. Let them do that. The whole department will, right? So raising tides rises all ships, right?
Yeah.
Is let them soar. If again, they soar past you, they soar past you, right? I mean, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a naive to the fact that and it's been done. I've had people smarter than me on the team for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what it's there for. That's the beauty of it. And I guess it's kind of saying that if you have the open mind that you may be out of a job at some point, but your value is somewhere else, right? And just let them, and the idea that if they are even above you, then let them soar into other conversations, right? There's things that they're great at, there's things that you're great at. And so if they're great at the vision for the department, when you do a quarterly meeting with your team, let them kind of speak first, right? And say, what do you think the vision is? And if you think that that is a problem because you're not the leader, then your vulnerability is not there, right? So I'm a huge vulnerability leadership characteristic. Like it is a very important skill set in this day and age. And I have no problem with someone saying, I think I see the vision, and it doesn't have to be the leader. and let them run. And then everybody just fills in. So we've got to let them be great at what they're great at. And then they might not be able to execute. We all know Colby. We all know these things, right? They may be a complete visionary in your team, but they can't execute it. Then great. I'll help them do that. Right.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
think there's recognizing there's space for everybody on every team,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
and
let them run.
it takes more than one, right? Like
Takes way more than one.
it's a beautiful thing when a group of people comes together
Yeah,
and bring their gifts to the table,
for
uh,
sure.
complement each other, and can do that in a
Well,
vulnerable, authentic
well,
way.
and I think we need to find them, right? So teams that I look at that, clearly by what they do, they need to have a lot of activators, a lot of people that are what working genius, tenacity, some of those things. Um, but every team needs somebody with innovator or wonder or kind of that visionary thing, right? So even Colby looking at that and saying, how do I have a quick start on this team, right?
Mhm.
There's plenty of teams that don't have quick starts, and you're missing something. It's not, you may never know, you may never feel it, but I strongly encourage teams to look at that. And again, this goes to, creating an opening and saying, you know what, that team member has what it takes, but they're going to challenge us. Bring them
Yeah.
on. Bring
Yeah.
them on. It is your duty as a leader to challenge your team because they're going to make your team better. So it's, again, it's just a different mindset of not being so protective of your job and or you're supposed to be the leader and know it all. That is, I don't, it
Yeah.
doesn't work in my world for
Yeah,
sure.
it's gonna keep you stuck
Keep you stuck
for sure, for sure.
for sure.
So another thing you talked about was, you used the phrase do them a favor and help them find a place. So what is that?
Yeah. Yeah. If they don't fit, do them a favor. So oftentimes, um, and this is always harder if they're core values. So if they fit our core values and the right people in the organization, and they're getting by, and they're just doing enough to, kind of be on the radar, but not kicking out the wall, not actively disengaged, having a conversation with them open and honest. Again, this comes back to the vulnerability and saying, let's just talk. If you want to stay here, you can stay here, but let's just talk. Are you happy? Right? Are you totally, again, if they've been in EOS, they'll understand GWC. Do you innately get this? Like I can wake up every single morning and talk, and I can wake up every single morning and sell. That's what I'm great at, right? And so it's just an innate thing. I can't stop doing it. I can't stop networking. I can't stop meeting great people like yourself. It's just what I'm good at. And if you put somebody that's not like that in a sales seat, you're not doing them any favors. And so do them a favor and have the conversation to say, again, some people will come around, but most of the time it's just like, let me help you. And I don't mean to just fire them. I mean, really help them find it. So for me, I'm a huge networker. And so when they say, Michelle, I really just don't like this, but I like this, like this, like, I'm going to connect them with somebody and be like, hey, this gentleman, this woman has been an amazing contributor to our team. She just doesn't fit here, right? Not core values, but by the job. And let me find you a job. And I will connect them to a million people. So I also, it's in my skill set to do that. And so I don't know if that's in everybody's skill set. And so
Right.
a little bit is do them a favor and get them out, right? It's better, greater good for your organization. But one step further is if you know somebody or somewhere that they would be great at, get them there. Right.
Yeah.
And it will come back. And I kind of put in there raving fans all over, right? It's raving fans to EOS. It's raving fans to your company. It's raving fans to you. All of that idea of creating an opening is creating raving fans in the world of whatever you're looking to do.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm. I got a quick
Yeah.
story about that actually.
Yeah.
My first fractional client, what I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
uh, we had a guy who was a project manager, and we did predictive index
Ah,
when I was there,
yeah.
and we realized he was what's called a maverick, which
Mm,
I would say is probably more like a visionary type of personality,
gotcha.
and he was in a project management role. And he was there for about 3 months, not even 3 months. And I just started to realize, like, he's in the wrong, he's in the wrong seat. He's
Yeah.
struggling.
Mhm,
He's, overwhelmed. He's losing his
mhm,
confidence. You
mhm.
know, good guy though. Like I really liked him. And
Absolutely.
he was very vulnerable and authentic, and like
Mm,
I'd say he was a good core values match, but he
mhm,
was not the right guy to be that a project
mhm,
manager.
mhm.
And when we did predictive index, it just kind of pushed me over the limit or the edge. I'm like, wow, this guy's in the wrong seat. And it's
Yeah.
not in his best interest to stay in the seat.
Mm-mm.
And
It's
so,
it's it's hurting them. They just don't know
yeah.
it.
So
Yeah.
we had a conversation
Yeah.
and he actually brought it up. He's like, yeah,
Mm.
I think I'm supposed to be a project manager. And
Mm.
you know what? I think I agree with you. And I really like you. I care about you. I'd love to keep you on the team if we had a spot for you.
Mm.
But I think it's probably best if you move on. And
Right.
it was the most amicable situation I've ever seen, right?
Mhm.
In letting
Mhm.
somebody go. And I blessed him on the way out, right? But
Yes. Mhm.
ultimately, you don't do someone a favor by keeping them stuck
No.
in
Yeah.
something that they're just not suited for.
And often I would say, I know the statistics. So 75% of the ones that I have had to let go in my life, that I have had those tough conversations, 75% of them came back and said, thank you.
Yeah.
Literally came back. I mean, it took a year, right? They didn't realize it.
Yeah.
They got some struggles, right? It's hard, different economic times when I had to do that, right? 2008 was not a fun time to do what I did.
No.
Where the job market was so tight or so open, like there was, jobs everywhere and all that kind of thing. And it was just, or no jobs, excuse me, everywhere. And so they struggled with the first year. And I think that's but if there's any grace, if anybody's listening to this thinking, what's in the end, that's really enjoyable. It feels really good as a human. Again, my personal mission is to have everybody reach their full potential. That's it. That's it. I did what my personal mission is about. And so that I feel like I owe that to people to do it. So, and I think the other one point, if I have 2 seconds,
Yeah.
oftentimes, the loyalty to the early adopters to your organization, we don't realize we've outgrown them. And so when we have a person that was with us from the very beginning and that has done so many jobs and has just been great, the organization does outgrow them if they don't keep up. I shouldn't say that it will always, but if they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
keep up, again, the grow or die EOS mindset is that if they're not keeping up, if they're not doing that, or we're not helping them do that, it is okay, and we do as an organization do outgrow them. So a head of operations of a $1 million to $5 million company may be great, but he may or she may not be able to handle it at $10 million company, and that seems really strange, but I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
So thank you for indulging me to share
Yeah.
that, because I
Yeah.
do. I
No,
think we owe that favor too.
I've seen that as well, for sure. The other thing I've seen too is as you implement EOS or, just get much more clear about where you're going and how you're going there and the core values that you have. Quite often, I think, often you don't have to tell people this, but they feel it for themselves, right? And they self identify and leave because
Mhm.
it's like, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't, I don't feel like I fit here anymore. And that's okay,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's
no,
okay.
for sure.
Sometimes they'll leave on their own and sometimes you need to help them. But,
Yes, definitely.
but
But
it's
I
not
think you're right.
for them to be there if they
No.
don't fit me.
Yeah. And I do share with my leadership teams, if you do the uh, interview process well and you're literally trying to have people not come on board, like that, I'm not kidding, like trying, like telling them that this is a way we do things. Please don't come on if you're not. See your way to the door or don't come back for a second interview. If you do all of that and then have quarterly conversations, you honestly, to your point, you'll never have to fire somebody. They will leave on their own and they will have a conversation with you saying, I don't fit, to your point that we've been making here for the last few minutes. Is I can tell you now that I know what I know and I've done it a few things internally when I was not an implementer, I didn't have to fire anybody for 2 years. And people left. And there's good turnover and there's bad turnover. And that's
Yeah.
always good turnover.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think you're right.
And it's a little scary, right? To let go of maybe somebody who's
Oh,
been there a long time. It's like,
yes.
there's that comfort level, you know what you have, and you don't know
Yes.
what that next person that comes in. But
Mm.
I just like to encourage people, like, what if their next person is incredible? Right?
Right. Right.
And they're just the right person and they thrive, you know,
Correct.
like, you gotta view it that way.
Yeah.
Uh, because staying, with what you have, if it's not working,
Right.
it's easier in the short
It
term.
is. Right. And it's comfortable. And so,
Yeah.
we have the saying is get comfortable getting uncomfortable, right, in our world. And so I think that's it. And I think that um y- y- you'll be surprised on the skill set of the next person. Like if you do the right job on the front end, they're just
Mhm.
going to break through the ceiling without you even knowing it. And then again, it goes back to the very first conversation we were having. That's what GWC looks like for an operations head at 10 million
Mhm.
versus the gentleman that got you there. And there's so much grace and gratefulness to those people that get us there. But the saying is, what got you here will not get you there, right? And
Mhm.
it won't. You have to change some things.
Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
that's people. Yeah.
Well, any last thoughts? Anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I don't. Yeah, I think that we covered it. It was such a great conversation. I'm at a loss for words because I think we covered everything that I would love to share. I just think that again, just having the confidence and knowing what you're doing is right for those people is really where it's at for me. Is whether you see them out, whether you see them out and find them a job, or ultimately whether they come for your job or you lose somebody and put them in another seat and you have to sit in two. I just think thinking about the greater good, what's the better and the greater good for the organization is kind of what I would love to kind of summarize that at.
Yeah,
And we owe that to the company, and we owe that in leadership abilities to
yeah,
be able to do that.
yeah, that's great. That's great. So if someone wants to get in touch with you,
Oh,
how would they do that? What's the best way?
yeah, email address probably is the best way, or I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Let's try to go LinkedIn first. And so it's Michele Mollard, but it's Michele with one L. So Michele. And I joke around, the saying may not be true, but if you find it and it's a gentleman's face, he's the gentleman that has the exact same name as I, and he lives in France. So just so you know, I'm not a gentleman and I don't live in France. So find me on LinkedIn. And then email address is michele.mollard, and the spelling is Mollard. So Michele with one L dot, and then Mollard at eosworldwide.com.
Awesome.
Those are the two ways. Yeah,
I
it's a
just
funny
realized
story.
I've been
I can tell
pronouncing.
you, I've got a few LinkedIn messages and it's in French. And I'm like, I have to investigate this guy.
I just realized I've been pronouncing your last name wrong. I
It's
apologize for
okay. Everyone, it doesn't look like Millard, right? It should be MI. If it was, I just blame my dad.
that. Good. So awesome. Well, thank you, Michele. It's been awesome. Thank you for sharing your passion for
Yeah.
LMA and EOS with us. I'm sure it's been impactful for anyone who's listening or watching. So if today's interview added value for you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with other EOS implementers and experts in the world of business.